The Lowe Post is brought to you by Goodyear, helping you discover the road ahead. Goodyear, more driven.
And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast on a Monday afternoon after a thrilling game two between the Nuggets and the Lakers, and a slightly less thrilling but still interesting game three between the Celtics and the Heat, where thank the basketball gods we are going to have a series in the Eastern Conference Finals. And now, without any further ado, it is time to say the three most anticipated words in the history of niche basketball podcasting. What up, Beck?
What up, Zach? How are you, man?
Bleacher Reports, asterisks for now, Howard Beck. Welcome to the Lowe Post. I hope you are doing well. And we will talk about your wonderful video essay that you did for TNT on social justice that aired last night, where you looked frankly like a movie star. I mean, the message is what's important, and we all agree. Any reasonable thinking person agrees with that. But I just was like, should I get Howard's autograph? I don't know. I don't know if I can look at you the same way anymore. There was like, how many cameras were there? There was like the camera angles, the profile shots, the beard. Did you get a touch up on the beard? I was like, I'm a little uncomfortable with all of this.
I was a little uncomfortable. I was more than a little uncomfortable. I was advocating for more B-roll. Can we just get more B-roll? Can we show other people other than me? But it was kind of a personal message, and so they opted that. I had no idea, Zach. Trust me on this. 2 weeks ago, when we shot this in an odd little basement beneath an old church in Bushwick, Brooklyn, I had no idea, despite the number of cameras in the room, that there was going to be that much me or that many angles of my very angular face and my scruffy 3 days of growth beard.
Also, no, that's more than 3 days of growth. Don't like lie that you can grow that much facial hair in 3 days. That was a continuous project.
There were no makeup artists on site, so that was alarming to me because I need all the help I can get. It was, yeah, look, I mean, the premise at the time was you'll read all this, we'll record it all, but we'll flash to you when you grab the chair, and we'll do this, you'll walk in and whatever, and then everything else is just going to be footage. Cool. Great.
See, missed opportunity for you in that what you should have done was be like, can we have an extra hour where I can just record badass movie lines just so I can have like you feeling lucky?
That would have been phenomenal.
You talking to me? You talking to me? Like just go and just like go through them all. I mean, that's what you should have done.
Either that, or we should have had like De Niro stand in as me. I'll just do the voiceover. Like, I needed a stunt double. I needed somebody who was more presentable on camera. My face was never meant to be that zoomed in on in HD in the year 2020 when people have like 65-inch TV screens. I am frightened at what people might have been seeing. I have a smaller TV. My TV is like 37 inches. Like, my TV is like comically small. I am frightened at what people with real size flat screen technologically advanced TVs we're seeing. I apologize, America.
Well, I thought it was wonderful. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it later. Let's talk about Lakers Nuggets, where once again the Nuggets rallied. It's what they do. Felt like they were out of the game, and spoiler alert, they were not. Nikola Jokic got aggressive and continued his ascension into the ranks of some of the greatest clutch scorers in recent NBA history, period. Not for a big man, not for a center, not for whatever, just period. He's now 10 of 15 in the last 5 minutes of close games in the playoffs. And I read off his stats last week on the podcast. He's been like a 50% crunch time shooter the last 2 years. His plus minus is ridiculous. And then Mason Plumlee and Jeremy Grant, something happened. I don't know what happened. Something happened. Some Three Stooges, Keystone Cops level miscommunication, and Anthony Davis was suddenly open. Anthony Davis is now 12 of 30 on threes in the playoffs, 3 of 7 against Denver, and he hits the defining shot so far of his career, an absolute gut punch for the Nuggets, who now have to face the prospect of coming down from 2-0, which seems like nothing. 2-0 for the Nuggets is like we just barely getting started, but it's just really, really hard. I mean, this is LeBron James. He can sniff it. He can smell it. it is really hard to see a LeBron James team losing 4 out of 5 in the playoffs in any circumstances that don't involve them playing the Kevin Durant Warriors with J.R. Smith doing crazy things or something. It just doesn't seem feasible. What is your emotional temperature take on this series after 2 games?
The number of times, Zach, that from my this is like the weird thing about watching these things from home instead of being in arenas. And this is the first playoffs I'll have not covered since 1997 when I first started covering this league. I find myself like outwardly yelping more often because I don't have to comport myself the way I do on press row. So I'm sitting on my couch. The number of times in the last couple of minutes of last night, I was like, oh, ooh, like that ridiculous KCP shot from the corner that he just kind of heaved with the clock running down. Anthony Davis' shot for sure. Jokic's shot. Jokic's tip-in of the Jamal Murray.
Unbelievable. Jokic is such a... I don't even know how... He's just like... It's just silliness. Some of the things he does are just silly. Even his shot with 20 seconds left, he has to shoot it up because he can barely jump. And it's just so soft, though. It's like the one against Utah in Game 7. It's awkward. He has to shoot it leaning back and going up, and it just goes like it doesn't touch the rim. It just tickles the twine, as they say.
But what a fun final few minutes. Not fun for the Nuggets and their fans, but that was just a really exciting, fun, and weird game 2 of a series. And look, I mean, this very easily could be 1-1 right now. And maybe we have a different discussion today. I don't know what the stat is on LeBron teams up 2-0. I have to believe that he's never lost up 2-0. Is that?
I can tell you that it's whatever it is, it's going to be good. It's like he's certainly never. No, it's good. I don't know. I can
whatever it is. Yeah, somebody out there has it, and they'll correct me if I'm wrong. I can't imagine him ever having lost a series being up 2-0. Anthony Davis. So that was it. Was this? So the shot itself was fantastic. Obviously, the blown coverage, which you alluded to by Plumlee, maybe we'll find out today what exactly was going through his head. I haven't seen any quotes from him about that. That was only the 25th playoff game of Anthony Davis's career. Anthony Davis has been in this league a long time now. That was the 25th playoff game of his career. This is his first conference finals. It's only his 6th playoff series, and that's how long it took to have like a defining moment. Which tells you something about where he's been and something about what it means to be playing alongside LeBron James. But that was a fantastic shot. And the one he hit before that. And the fact that too, like, look, Jokic, that was a nice shot. Jokic hit over him when he posted him up for the go-ahead basket a couple minutes before that. That Anthony Davis, I think people still have these doubts about him, about how he's made up, about whether he has that kind of fortitude in big situations and everything. And it's because there hasn't been much of a track record. And so to see him kind of go like blow for blow with Jokic and then hit that big shot at the end, yell Kobe, which was cool. That's a fantastic moment. And the only thing missing, of course, is that should have been at Staples Center, where there would have been like an incredible explosion of everything from the crowd, and the scene and the whole feeling afterward would have been different. It's fun though with the bubble, where the entire team, like it's like some, little small school, Division III high school game, whatever the divisions are in high schools, I don't even know. And they're all running out to grab him on the court and like that. Those scenes are fun because they feel so organic without the crowd around. But yeah, years from now, we're still going to be watching some of these highlights and saying like it just looks and feels weird.
It's actually funny you say that, because this is the first time in the playoffs, the conference finals, where I feel like now, watching from afar, I'm not in Orlando, it's lacking a little bit of juice. Like, I think because the first couple of rounds, like there's just so many games, they come fast and furious. There's 2 games a night, 3 games a day. You're just trying to get through the games. Now it's like conference finals. This is an event. The teams have the stage to themselves every night, max 1 game, none tonight. This is when it starts to feel in the playoffs like you feel the magnitude of it. The atmosphere starts to become a thing. The number of media at a game increases, not to a finals level, but to a pretty heavy level. So this is the first time that I have felt the sensation of like, okay, now it's weird that this is the conference finals. Like now I feel even more just off than usual. I didn't feel that in the first couple rounds because the bubble looks great. It sounds great. It looks like basketball. It sounds like basketball. This is the first time where I'm like, it's cool. The basketball is awesome. Last night's game was unbelievable. Heat Celtics has just been a war. Game 4 of that series is going to be a ridiculous war. But it just felt like, it kind of doesn't feel like the conference finals.
I've had that feeling come and go. When the bubble first started, I thought, okay, this is going to take some getting used to. And then we had all those amazing shots during the seeding games and the early rounds, and Luka's doing awesome things, and Dame Lillard's doing awesome things, and you still feel the gravity of those shots and the drama of them, but there's something missing. And last night we felt it, and that's why all along, like, to me, the true test for all of us as viewers is going to be the finals. Will the finals still feel like the finals? And
no, the answer is going to be no. It's not going to feel like the finals.
It's gonna feel weird.
But that's not the same. Let's be clear.
It's not an asterisk.
No, and in fact, I think, I wrote this in May, and a lot of people thought it was way too optimistic because in May people were ready to denounce the league for even trying this, and I understood why. I mean, there's obviously it's fraught. The whole thing is fraught ethically, medically. I get it, and that's why I constantly said if any player who doesn't want to go, any coach who doesn't want to go, like, that's their right. They should take it. It's a scary thing, and we don't know what's going to happen. But I wrote, if this thing breaks right, if they can keep the virus out, if there is no outbreak on a team, if there is no superstar that for some reason gets waylaid for the wrong 2 weeks or 2 superstars, I do think winning this title could have an asterisk, but that the asterisk could be good. I called it a badge of honor, a marker of perseverance, and like, so far, knock on every piece of wood in sight, like, I think that's how this championship is going to be remembered. And that's why I got so annoyed last week. And we did a segment on Get Up about this. You could, like, Pablo Torre asked me on ESPN Daily, are you starting to hear that, well, LeBron didn't have to face the Bucks, didn't have to face the Clippers? Are people going to try to say that this doesn't count for as much? It's like, absolutely not. Like, this whoever wins this, Denver, Los Angeles, Boston, Miami, whoever wins it, I think, look, pending if the world is just destroyed in the next 10 years, we're not going to look back at anything. If the world is on fire and everything is terrible, we're not going to look back at anything. But if the world is somewhat normal in 2, 3, 4 years, I do think we'll look back at this and say that championship means something different in a way that is worth remembering and remarking upon.
I think I said something along these lines a couple months ago when they were getting ready to do this, when the asterisk question was coming up all the time in like early July. And I said, it actually is going to depend somewhat on the outcome. That if we get a finals of like Thunder versus Pacers, no disrespect to either team, it's going to be
disrespect. Just own it. You meant disrespect. You disrespected them.
Fine, I'm disrespecting everybody. If we end up with Thunder Pacers in the finals, it's going to mean something went terribly wrong, right? Like there were scenarios that,
or would it have meant that Luguentz Dort becomes a 30-point per game scorer, locking down everybody in sight? Maybe it would have meant that, Howard Beck.
This will always be the Dort bubble. But that, as long as I probably said it this way, I said, as long as one of the expected teams, one of the favorites wins, and at the time that was Bucks, Clippers, Lakers, 2 of the 3 of which are gone, that will feel like it was legit. It will feel normal. It will depend to an extent on who's there. Now, that said, we're at the Final Four. Miami and Boston were both teams that you could have foreseen making a run. As one who was always, and you can now call me a hater, an anti-Milwaukee hater, as one who was always saying I didn't completely buy into the Bucks' dominance based on their record alone, and always thought they were vulnerable, I don't think it means that much that they're out. I don't think that puts a dent in any of this.
It does. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
It doesn't. And the Clippers had a really choppy season. I am still a little bit stunned that they collapsed as badly as they did, and I still believe that the Clippers on talent alone, and listen, on paper doesn't win anything. That we know this, and the Clippers just proved it again. But the Lakers were always a legit title team, clearly, and if they somehow were to lose to the Nuggets, the Nuggets were a very good team all year, a top 3 team. Like there are no outliers that are going to end up in
the Nuggets have earned our respect.
Absolutely.
They're a botched inbounds play from being 1-1, and all the talk right now being about the Nuggets and how resilient they are again, and how they're right in this with the Lakers. Okay, that's the margin. Now they got blown out in game 1, so the Lakers in the aggregate have pretty much handled this series. Boston with Hayward back is legit. That's a legit team. That's a really, really good team. And Miami is a different team than they were when the normal season ended 19 years ago. They reinvented their starting lineup. They integrated a couple of critical trade pieces. They are a different team. They're a better team than I thought they would be, but they're a different team. All of these teams are for real. Let's get back to Anthony Davis. 2 Decembers ago, when the Anthony Davis trade speculation was starting to bubble. It was not even just starting to bubble. It was overflowing. The pot was overflowing. The bubbles were going all over the kitchen. I wrote that any Anthony Davis trade has a chance to be, or maybe I don't remember exactly. I might have argued that it will be the most important trade in the NBA since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar got traded to the Lakers. And that means trades. So no free agency signings. I didn't count those. No sign-in trades. I didn't count those. Just in terms of 26 years old, what this guy can do on both ends of the floor, and the prospect of whoever gets him, assuming you can re-sign him, which I think is a safe bet for the Lakers.
Yes.
You are getting this player from age 26 till TBD. You're not getting this player from 30 to 38 or whatever. You're getting the best years of this guy's career. And I think so far what we're seeing is that's been proven to be true. And Anthony Davis, or maybe not, that's been proven to be somewhat true. Anthony Davis in the playoffs has been ridiculous. And if you want a stat that sums up how good he's been, in the playoffs so far, the Lakers with LeBron on the bench are only -4. That doesn't sound great, but the Lakers have spent the last 2 years and even this year getting absolutely mauled whenever LeBron rests. They're -28 with Anthony Davis on the bench. So their non-LeBron lineups are performing better than their non-Davis lineups.
Wow.
I think his defense in the last 2 series has been outstanding in a totally different way than what we know. Well, not in a totally different way, but in Houston, he was a rover. He was everywhere. He was like totally just flying all over the court, rotating onto everyone, running shooters off the line, then running back to protect the rim, then running another shooter off the line. Here, he's alternating between two or 3 different types of defense, depending on who's in the game. And he's been just wrecking stuff all over the floor. And offensively, it's not just the 3-point shooting at the buzzer. It's not just the 12 of 30 from 3. He's cooking Jokic in the post. 1.23 points per post up for Anthony Davis so far in this series. That's a monster number. Jokic can't keep up with his face-up game. He's doing just everything at a super high level. And, when this trade happened, there was a tendency in the media, myself included, to sort of marvel at everything New Orleans got, right? New Orleans got everything. Yes. They got all the picks. They got all the swaps. They got the right to defer a Lakers pick if they thought they would be worse the next year. Like, that's incredibly unusual. But even in writing all that at the time, I wrote that really maybe all that matters is that the Lakers got Anthony Davis, because this player for the next 5 or 10 years is worth whatever you gave up. For 1 year, if disaster happens and he leaves, it's a complete catastrophe. But for 5 or 10 years, he's that good. He's the backstop when LeBron gets old, so you don't have a Brooklyn Nets situation where you've traded everything and you stink because Anthony Davis is too good. And this playoffs has paid it off. He has been unbelievable in the playoffs.
I wrote at the time, as long as I'm pissing off every fan base in the same podcast, I wrote at the time that the Lakers won the trade but lost the negotiation. Won the trade because they got the best player. You get Anthony Davis, you won the trade. That's easy. It doesn't mean that you negotiated well, and they didn't. They gave up way more than they should have had to, given that Anthony Davis demanded a trade, had all the leverage in the world, and only wanted to go to one team, the Lakers. But yeah, nobody will give a crap if they win this championship and if they win more beyond this. And one of the amazing things, too, just looking at this postseason run, Zach, LeBron is down to 16.8 field goal attempts per game in this playoff run, which would be, if it holds up, the lowest of his career. And we always were wondering, like, when is that shift going to come? And like, no, LeBron still drives this thing. There's a reason LeBron was even a distant number 2, but number 2 in the MVP race. And AD, certainly got on a lot of ballots. But we all understand that as much as he needed Anthony Davis, and LeBron is the engine and everything else of this team. But Anthony Davis is averaging 22 field goal attempts in the 2 games so far in this series. LeBron 15.5. He doesn't have to heavy lift, and we've always wondered if and when the shift would come. Like LeBron, when we talk about like is LeBron's window closing, it's because LeBron has number 1 option. LeBron will be 36 in December, but if this is what we're starting to see is this inversion, where he is still the ultimate playmaker. He is still the one who drives the offense. He drives the pace of the game. He puts everybody in the right places. He plays defense. He does everything else that he does. But if the scoring load is shifted that much more toward Anthony Davis, then yes, then you extend your championship window potentially for years, because he doesn't have to do as much heavy lifting.
Well, and I think zooming even further out than the Anthony Davis trade, I think the other big story of this season for the Lakers has been Anthony Davis's arrival, Frank Vogel's arrival. I think all of that, LeBron is smarter than all of us combined about basketball. I think he looked at his team and his coach and said, we have a chance to be really good on defense this year. I'm buying in from day one. I'm not saving myself from the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean I'm guarding the number 1 option every night, because I'm 35 years old. I'm 3rd all time in minutes. I'm too old for that. But I'm buying in every night. I'm going to be a monster rotating around the floor. He scares. There were a couple threes last night where Jeremy Grant got the ball open because LeBron was helping off him. And one pitter-pat it's not a pitter-pat, one thump of LeBron's footsteps. And Jeremy Grant was like, holy shit, I'm passing the ball. Like, I want no part of even shooting a 3 with this guy coming at me. And he's been doing that all year. He did not do that in Cleveland. He did not buy in defensively like that in Cleveland 2.0, in the 4 championship runs in Cleveland. And look, when I was doing my defensive player of the year and all defense stuff, one of the things I do is I ask tons of people for their opinions, players, coaches, GMs, etc. I also ask analytics guys around the league, what is your secret stuff? Tell me about who the best forwards are or whatever. A few of them came back and said, it might surprise you, but our stuff ranks LeBron as the best defender on the Lakers and not Anthony Davis. And to me, that didn't pass it passed my eye test because I've seen LeBron play defense. He's been amazing. I thought Anthony Davis was still better, but the fact that there was these systems around the league spitting this out, I think that's the other big issue, or the other big storyline, is that the Lakers have bought in from day one. And when LeBron buys in from day one, it's LeBron James. Everybody has to buy in. There is no tolerance for dispassionate defense from anyone. And we have seen the payoff for that in the playoffs. They have been outstanding defensively and against good offensive teams. I mean, you're not going to hold them to like bottom 5 level points per possession, but you're going to hold them to good enough that you can win, and they've done that.
There was a possession last night, I think it was the 4th quarter, maybe it might have been earlier. Anthony Davis snuffed out 2 Jamal Murray attempts or was on Jamal Murray and forced him to give up the ball twice in the same possession out on the perimeter. Anthony Davis.
It was like a little fast fish trying to swim around an octopus. Yeah. And the octopus being like, nope, I'm over here. Nope, I'm over here. No, I got 8 arms and they're really long. You're not getting by me, little fish. You think you had a great postseason, fish. You got a lot of, you're a clutch fish, but you're not getting by me.
Insane. Shouldn't be possible. Speaks to why Anthony Davis is such a great defender. And, it's funny. We've forgotten the fact that Avery Bradley is not there. Avery Bradley, who was supposed to be one of their key backcourt defenders, and every series I've kind of tried to throw that out there as like the clever kind of, well, is this going to be the series where they miss Avery Bradley? Well, no, apparently they're not going to miss Avery Bradley no matter what backcourt they're facing, whether it's the Blazers, the Rockets, Jamal Murray. I wonder about this too, though. So for the last several years here, we've had this like very unicorn small forward driven league, right? It's Kawhi Leonard, it's Kevin Durant, it's LeBron. LeBron's not having to face any of those guys. And I wonder if, like, at least some of this, LeBron, whether it's defensively or whether it's just the energy he has for offense, like LeBron hasn't had to deal with some of the big time assignments that he's had in some of the past postseasons because he's not getting Kawhi and Paul George. Kevin Durant, obviously not a factor this season. And Michael Porter Jr. and Jeremy Grant are not exactly guys who are going to be testing LeBron, at least at the position, right? LeBron does much more than just guard his own position.
Well, looming in the next round, should the Lakers advance, and I say should the Lakers advance, and I mean it because I'm done assuming that the Nuggets are out of a series until the final buzzer goes off and Jokic is on the flight back to Serbia for some cevapi. Is Jimmy Butler and or it's heaven. It's Jimmy Butler or Jason Tatum, and LeBron figures to get some time on both of those guys, one of those guys, if the Lakers advance.
Yes, and we none of us are going to sleep on the Nuggets ever again.
I tell you, man, you don't want to get called out by Jamal Murray. You don't want it to happen to you.
No, certainly not. By the way, one of the other things about the Nuggets that I think is a lot of fun, and that just on the Jokic side of it, I mean, Jamal Murray's had a phenomenal kind of coming out party in this postseason. I did a feature on Jokic a couple of years ago when
it made me very angry because you got all the good Jokic stories, and there was none left. There was none left for any of us. There was one about him eating ice cream from like a barrel of ice cream that made me very upset.
Tim Connolly was phenomenal for that story, and Jokic was great. So at that time, I remember talking to Mike Malone for like a half hour on one of their off days. I was out there for a few days. And one of the things about his team, he was like, yeah, we're a really nice team. It's a really nice bunch of guys. Everybody's about the right things and they get along well and they got the right values as players and everything. But it was almost like too nice. And part of that, not just whether they needed some nasty, as Pop would say, but also like Jokic was like this emerging star who was this kind of very sheepish about his stardom, right? Like Jokic, like his English was still coming along at that time. He was, obviously still a bit puffier version of Nikola Jokic then, but there was no assertiveness about him. There was as a playmaker, but not as a scorer. And now you're just seeing him go to town on guys, and you're seeing him like go right into AD's body last night. And I think maybe, I'm sure this has been written somewhere, but I feel like it has not gotten enough notice. Maybe just it's been more gradual than that Jokic, I just feel like looks like a much more assertive star. When we talk about one of the reasons I think that he doesn't get enough run for MVP or some other awards, whatever, the last couple of years, is that he doesn't strike us as the typical alpha dog, wants to tear your heart out kind of star. The numbers are there, the wins are there, but there's something else missing that he doesn't fit that archetype for us in the NBA. But right now, like look at the way he's going at guys, and I feel like that part of it has emerged.
Well, regular season Jokic averages 20 points a game. Playoff Jokic is averaging 26 points a game without sacrificing any other parts of his game. I said last week on this podcast, he is the true, everyone has compared him to Marc Gasol since he came into the league for obvious reasons. To me, Jokic is the true heir to Dirk Nowitzki as the greatest crunch time scoring big man of his era, a guy who can hurt you from every place on the court. Now he's obviously a much better. Jokic is his own guy. There just hasn't been a guy like this. But in terms of big man scorer that you can give the ball to all over the court in crunch time and he makes you pay, he's the true heir to Dirk, I think, more than we've talked about. More broadly, going back to the Lakers and their defense and all this, one of the things that was a little maddening about the Lakers pre-coronavirus was it was hard to know, like, when the chips are down, what is this team? Is it Anthony Davis at center? Is it supersized lineups with Kuzma at the 2? What is their identity on the floor? And I think, their rotation right now suggests that they have figured out sort of they can play all different styles. And, they have this nice set in stone rotation now. They start with their starters. They go to Davis at center with LeBron resting and then with LeBron back. Then LeBron comes back and they go with this Caruso, Rondo, Kuzma, James, Davis lineup, which has done very well. Then second quarter, Anthony Davis takes his rest. They stay small. They put Markieff Morris at center. Caruso, Rondo, Kuzma, LeBron, Markieff Morris, plus 23 in 37 minutes in the playoffs. It's their second most used lineup. I was dead wrong about Markieff Morris. I did not think he would give the Lakers anything close to this. Then Dwight and AD have been coming back in this series, and then sort of TBD from there. Vogel can finish out this last 6 minutes of the half. He can feel it out. Do I want to go back to Anthony Davis at center, as he did finishing last night's game when the Lakers were in the mud? And they've developed, he's just figured out the roster and how to flow back and forth between styles. And I think at the bedrock of all of that is, how are we going to remain a sound defensive team the entire game? And they have gone from a team where I just didn't know who was going to be on the floor and when, to right now they know exactly how they want to play every minute of this game. They have it mapped out.
Not only that, and isn't it interesting, by the way, what was Vogel, their third choice?
Well, what was first? Ty Lue, and then who else was involved? It's all just
Monty Williams. Monty Williams and then Ty Lue, something like that. But like, it just shows you that one, Vogel probably did not get enough respect for what he did with the Pacers, however many years ago that was, and two, that sometimes teams don't know what they're, as the twists and turns of the search process go on, you don't know what you're falling into, what you're missing, what you're ending up with. It's just, anyway, I think the Frank Vogel story, because he's such an understated coach and we don't think of him in that way. This has been an interesting emergence for him as well, quietly. The rotation, I mean, think about how many times we wondered over the course of however many months, can they really rely on Alex Caruso? Like Alex Caruso, yeah, it's a fun story. He's nice, good player, great underdog, good, fun story, the way he looks, the way he plays, all that. Like, it's all fun. They call him the GOAT, blah, blah, blah. But like, he plays serious minutes and we're in the conference finals now. Rondo, every time Rondo comes back, we think, my gosh, are they really going to keep investing this many minutes in Rondo in year, whatever it's been, and 5 years since we last thought he really was still a plus player.
I thought Rondo was a plus player for them all year. I wrote about him in a couple of 10 Things columns in December.
You did.
Rondo is a basketball player. He knows how to play. And yeah, I get all the reasons why he's unsexy. Some of the analytics weren't good, but like, the guy just knows how to play, and that matters, and it matters in the playoffs. And by the way, if the Nuggets want to shore up one thing in this series that may actually be under control, Rajon Rondo pick and rolls, 1.6 points per possession in this series. The Rajon LeBron pick and roll destroyed them. Rondo Anthony Davis pick and roll. They need to find a way to get under those picks. They haven't been able to do that, and he's just picking them apart. Sorry, go ahead. No. He's averaging like what, eight assists a game or something in this. He's averaging 11 assists per 36 minutes in the playoffs and shooting 10 of 21 on threes. He's been outstanding. So this is what's amazing about Vogel's rotation and just about the Lakers in general, because one of the reasons that some of us, I didn't lean Clippers hard, by the way, Laker fans, but I did lean Clippers like a lot of people did before the season, because the Clippers had more identifiable plus players and options throughout the rotation. And the Lakers, all of these guys, I think Vogel's using them perfectly with it. And none of them are, I think, going outside of their own boundaries that often. No one's being stretched either in minutes or role. But all of them individually, you look at and you go, well, yeah, I guess you could get away with having that guy for this amount of time and this, but you wouldn't want to do too many. And you look up and down the roster, and there were too many guys who you had question marks about, and none of those questions are mattering right now. I think they're being used perfectly. They closed last night's game with a lineup that I've been waiting for them to use more. And that's Caruso, KCP, Green, LeBron, AD. With apologies to Kuzma, I think that might be their best lineup. They've only played it something like 11 or 16 minutes or something. I think 11 minutes in the playoffs. And it's because they haven't needed to play it much, because Rondo's been very good. Kuzma's been very solid. And their centers in this series are contributing. And that speaks to, I think, again, how they're getting contributions from lots and lots of people that above expectation. And it comes down to, again, I underestimated maybe a little bit the degree to which just having LeBron and Anthony Davis buying in on both ends of the floor solves almost everything. Like, it just solves every problem that you have. And, we'll see if the Nuggets can get back in this series, but I'm sorry, you wanted to say something else, I think. No, I think the only other thing that had hit me is that we've usually seen LeBron teams as being, look, they've been all big threes, right? It was him and Wade and Bosh, and then it was him and Kyrie and Kevin Love. And this is the first time where we didn't really and LeBron himself said this, right? We're not the only ones, us dumb outsiders,
who wondered, well, who's their third best player? Who's going to bring it on a night when one of the other two guys is off a little bit, or they just they need that third scorer? And the Clippers had Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell as a 1-2 punch. And what do the Lakers have? And LeBron himself even said once, I can't remember if he asked it or said it, that we need Kyle Kuzma to be that guy. And some nights he is, some nights he's not.
I'll tell you this. He's brought it, and I wrote this from the beginning of the bubble. He's brought it on defense the entire bubble. And if you watch a lot of their possessions last night, the Lakers' defense has been beautiful in the playoffs. Whenever there's a nugget slipping open, a little bit open to the rim, there's always a little flash. Sometimes it's Kuzma in from the corner. Sometimes it's Rondo in from the corner. Caruso had a great stunt up to the wing and then back to his guy in the corner and swiped the ball down. They are covering for each other. They're on a string. It's been really cool. It's been really cool to see. And to me, I mean, look, I selfishly want more of this series because I love to watch Jokic and I love to watch the Nuggets. More specific than that, I think the most interesting chess match in the series is Murray-Jokic pick and roll or Murray-Jokic off-ball action. The Lakers are switching that a lot. Down the stretch of game 2, they tried to stop switching it because Jokic was picking them apart a little bit. I'm just fast, but they clearly entered the series saying, we are comfortable switching this. We're comfortable putting a much smaller human being on Nikola Jokic, and we're going to double him, and we're confident to some degree that we can rove around the floor and rotate and reset and snuff their possessions. That chess match has gone back and forth, and we could talk about it a little bit, but that is where Anthony Davis has been monstrously effective in the playoffs. So if there's a center on the floor, right? If JaVale or Dwight is on the floor, that means AD is guarding Millsap or Jeremy Grant. And when Jokic starts going to work in the post against a little guy, he can rove off those guys and just wreck everything. And that's one of the reasons why they've been able to survive to some degree. The degree that they've not just been totally destroyed by Jokic is that he's on the back line. He's then rotating out to the corner. Now things get a little bit different when AD's at center and then he's the one switching on to Jamal Murray, and it's a little harder for him to wreck stuff. But when they have their big lineups on the floor, it's really hard. It's harder for Denver to get traction to some degree with those plays.
Which is amazing too, because you think, Jokic getting switched onto Jokic should be deadly, and doubling him should be deadly because he's such an incredible passer. To be able to get away with that at all on the Lakers' part is rather remarkable. And yes, again, speaks to AD's value.
And you can see their Denver is very aware of where Anthony Davis is when Jokic is posting up a smaller guy and that help is coming. Because when he's on Murray, so when he's playing center, he's switched on to Murray. Murray has figured out I can only be two places. I either need to be on the other side of the floor so that Anthony Davis cannot do anything to Jokic and just rain terror at the rim, or I need to be one pass away where if he helps down, Jokic can kick it to me and I can shoot a three, or a third guy's going to rotate to me and I can pass it off. He had a couple big threes like that, one at the end of the third quarter. So it's just an interesting chess match to see. Denver has to think really hard. Plays that are normally pretty easy for them. Jokic passing to open shooters, Jokic passing to cutters, Jokic just picking people apart like a surgeon. He's still doing some of that against the Lakers. But because of the Lakers' size and because of how much ground LeBron and AD cover on the floor, they've got to think a little bit harder about how do we move the chess pieces around to make it tougher for AD to just wreck stuff everywhere. And that's a tribute to how good he's been.
No doubt. What happens if Michael Porter Jr. suddenly emerges in this series? Is that a possibility? That's a fun wild card. He's playing a ton of minutes for a rookie who barely played in the regular season up until they got to the bubble. And he's had just enough breakout games that I wonder if he got loose one night, what that does for the Nuggets.
What do you have? 15 last night on 6 of 9. So that's a decent MPJ game.
Yeah.
They've got to they can't have a Gary Harris. I think he had one basket last night.
He was quiet.
They can't have Harris, Grant, and Millsap give them nothing. And by the way, it's a small thing. Jeremy Grant had no rebounds last night. 0. He had 4 in the first game. If you look at Jeremy Grant's rebounding rate in the playoffs, it's like not good for a guard. Like not good for a small point guard. And they're getting cooked on the boards here and there. But the Lakers, both teams are offensive rebounding quite a bit. Look, it's like we can dissect the series. It's fun, and the X's and O's are fun. I just can't imagine LeBron being able to see the finish line of the finals, losing 4 out of 5 to any team. And that's no disrespect for the Nuggets, who have earned our respect. And by the way, you just mentioned, can MPJ be a wild card? We should keep reminding people, Will Barton, who for stretches of who for most of their season was their third best player, is not here, and completely changes everything about the Nuggets if he's there.
Absolutely, and another defender to throw at LeBron, and another scorer.
Yeah, that's more like fresh meat to throw at LeBron, but still, he's an ambulatory 6-something person who can be in front of LeBron.
Fair point.
Do you want to switch gears and talk about the Eastern Conference Finals?
Oh, sure. We've still got some time here, yes.
Or do you have any other Lakers thoughts? I mean, I know the Lakers have been you spent a good chunk of your career around the Shaq Kobe Lakers. We've talked about that a lot. I know that franchise, sort of just seeing them succeed, you have a lot of connections there and stuff.
No, listen, I just obviously look, when we start going, broader, assuming that they make the finals and assuming that they're on track for their first non-Kobe championship in 1,000 years, and given all that they've been through and Kobe's death and all the weirdness of the season and all the doubts about LeBron, and his first year there was I don't want to say a disaster, but obviously was a massive disappointment in the injury. For them to be this close and for the possibility that they're going to win it, I just think like it's remarkable. And I know, listen, they're the Lakers, and because you're the Lakers, that's how you get Anthony Davis and LeBron in the first place. But for everything that they've gone through, and also just the tumult in that organization in the last several years, which we don't need to review, they're on track for what could be a really rather incredible, I don't know if it's a vindicating moment or just a typical Laker moment where this team is always kind of just seizing the top of the mountain again. And it's look, the sentimentality that people might cringe at, it's going to be impossible to avoid, and I don't think we even should try to avoid it. If they can win this in the same year that Kobe perishes in a helicopter crash and everything behind it, you don't want to overdo that, and you don't want to get sappy about it, and you don't want to trivialize his death either, and start playing on the symbolism too much. But it's meaningful. It was meaningful to that team at the time it happened. So many people in that organization were so deeply affected by it. It has been something that they have talked about. It has been, a point of a rallying point, and an emotional tethering for them together. So I just, if they make it, it's going to be very emotional, I think, for a lot of people.
And I've intentionally sort of put that stuff off until the end. That stuff and the LeBron Jordan stuff until the end, because I want to see how the season plays out. I have enough respect for these other teams, but you're right. And they're playing great, though, and their half-court offense, they've largely solved what looked to be a problem for them. Has not been a problem in quotes. I mean, it was a first-world problem for them. They're playing well offensively, no matter who's on the floor. I would like to see AD roll a little bit more when he's at center. I feel like with Jokic on the floor, they can get something out of that. I still want to talk about the basketball. I'm not ready to go the other places yet, but we're almost there. There are 2 games from the finals. In the East, we now have a series. Boston rallied, won Game 3. Almost handily, and then almost got a little scary for them at the end, because the Heat, I feel like if every game were 60 minutes long, the Heat would be undefeated. Like, it was just the Heat and the Nuggets would both be undefeated. Jokic is an Iron Man. He can play like 60 minutes a game. But anyway, the Celtics got a little scary toward the end. They figured out some stuff about Miami's zone. Hayward getting back was huge for them. Jaylen Brown had, considering the circumstances, maybe the best game of his career. I mean, look, you can take all your regular season games. They're great. A must-win Game 3 against a really good team. That was a monster performance by Jaylen Brown. What are you looking forward to as we enter Game 4, which is not until Wednesday, as they have this weird 3 days off here, and which I think is...
How did that happen?
I think my guess, without having asked anyone in the NBA, because I don't care that much, is that they want the West and the East. They want the West to catch up to the East
every other day.
But I think we can argue about who this benefits, who it hurts. But to me, anything that gives Hayward a chance to find his legs and recover from playing. He came out and played 31 minutes. He played more than I think he thought he was going to play, maybe. I think that's big for Boston. Boston has now outscored the Heat for the series. They were right there in games 1 and 2. Game 4, I just love a good game 4. 2-1. Now, obviously, if Boston wins game 4, it's 2-2. Every game after that becomes enormously important, pivotal elimination games. But I love a 2-1 game 4 because it's going to define how the rest of the series feels. If Miami wins it, it feels like a fait accompli that Miami's going to the finals. If Boston wins it, it's a best of 3. So much feels at stake in a game 4 like this. Boston played game 3 with our season is on the line urgency. I think and Miami, I thought played very hard. I don't think Miami played any less hard than Boston. There's just a difference when your season is literally on the line. I think game 4 is going to be an absolute war. I can't wait to watch it. What are you looking for?
Well, by the way, and quick aside, because this is something that we haven't said the words home or away this entire podcast, and nor should we necessarily. But I want to take a step back to note it, because one of the reasons that you love a game 5 is that it is that pivotal game where both teams have had their 2 home games, and if it's tied, game 5 is often determinative of the series, and a lot of that has to do with the home away rhythms of a normal series. And right now, Denver doesn't have that comfort of the stupid cliche of, well, they just held serve, which is of course the cliche that I hate most, and we're going home and we have the comforts of home. You didn't have any discomfort necessarily, but you have no comfort either. So nobody gets the emotional crutch or boost of the home crowd, or of saying, well, all right, we'll just put that behind us. We're changing scenery. We're changing venues. We'll be sleeping in our own beds. None of that comes into play. And eventually someday, while we will not be affixing asterisks, I think we will at least be curious about how some of these pivotal games, these moments where, the Celtics are down 2-1 and they've got that one more game. And if that were at the Garden, we would think that would be that much more of a boost for them. What if they lose it? Will we say, well, if they'd been I don't know. There's all these what ifs that in the moment right now, nobody cares. The basketball's been great, and there haven't been any real massive anomalies in this postseason. The only upsets, Nuggets over Clippers, isn't that big of an upset. They were only separated by 3 wins, I think, in the regular season. Miami over Milwaukee, I'm going to say was not as big of an upset as it appears to be, even though it will go down that way. Anyway, I'm curious about how we will ultimately look back at how the psychology and the lack of travel and all that affected the way these series unfolded. And this is one of those moments, because Heat Celtics game 4 is huge. I want to see one of the fun things about the Heat. One of my favorite things about the Heat, we talk about this team being defined by Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler is averaging 12 shots a game in the postseason or something. He's 4th on the Heat in field goal attempts right now, and has the 8th most field goal attempts in the series, because Jimmy Butler is a different kind of star to build around. And I love what it says about him. I love what it says about the Heat, but I'm also curious because he's had a 40-point game within the last 2 weeks. I'm curious if there's going to be a Jimmy Butler game where it's not the couple of defensive possessions at the end that win it, as he has in this series, but whether there's going to be a Jimmy Butler putting a stamp on it, because at some point you do need guys who can be those takeover individuals. And the Celtics now, with Hayward back and assuming he's up to speed, between Hayward and Brown and Tatum and Kemba, you've got 4 guys who can all do a ton of stuff with the ball in their hands. And the Heat have a little bit less flexibility that way. And I do wonder when this comes down to Jimmy, doing what we are used to seeing the lead stars in this league do.
See, I love the Jimmy thing because, he commented after the game, it's getting old now that we have to come back from all these deficits. And there have been all these public calls for Jimmy's got to assert himself. Jimmy, you can hear Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy, I think, on the broadcast talking about how Jimmy needs to, get involved earlier. I'm very interested to see how he approaches it, because those are easy things to say. And I don't think they're wrong. I think there is such a thing as sort of waiting too long for the game to come to you. Yeah. But I also wonder, given the way Miami plays, if he goes out there and tries to force it, if it almost could backfire on them, because it takes them out of the rhythm that they've been in offensively. It takes them out of their system. And, he's being guarded in turn by Tatum, Smart, Although I thought Smart on Goran Dragic was a huge adjustment by Brad. That was a very good call. And Jaylen Brown, I mean, all three of those guys are all defense level defenders. I only voted one of them on my 2 all defensive teams because you only get 10. As much as people think he should be on it, he should be on it, he should be on it. Wow, is that guy not on it? It's a crime. You only get 10 spots.
We need a third. We need an all defensive third team NBA.
They're all better than anybody the Bucks could throw at him, other than Giannis, who the Bucks barely threw at him because the Bucks just don't do that. It's just not. It's in the Bucks bylaws apparently that they can't do that very often.
I think the leadership council decided that. So
I think the RIP to the Bulls leadership council. It was very effective in its day. It was really good governance. So it's easier said than done for like Jimmy to just go out and get 30 against those guys, right? I mean, it's not that easy, and I'm interested to see how he approaches the game. I do think the Celtics smart on Dragic and hiding Kemba on Jay Crowder. I thought Brad was a little bit late to do that as much as he did, but it worked, and I would suspect that we will see that again from the jump in Game 4.
Goran Dragic, by the way, since I was jotting all that down and listing this, Goran Dragic leads the Heat in field goal attempts in the postseason by a lot.
Well, I mean, look, the story of the Heat, Jimmy and Bam get all the attention, and I mean, not very many people like Bam out more than I do outside of his immediate family. That's very well deserved. But the story of the Heat has been Crowder, Dragic, Hero outperforming expectations. And big reason why the Heat lost Game 3 was Crowder's three-point shooting finally fell back to earth. I think he was 2 of 10. And interestingly, he took a few off the dribble, which is a sign that it's a win for Boston. So one of the reasons you put Kemba on Crowder, you say, okay, he's probably not going to post Kemba up that much. You might try once or twice. But if the Heat redirect their offense to get Jay Crowder in the on-ball action as a screener and a more high-volume sort of centerpiece scoring option, that's a win for us because he's going to take some shots that are outside his usual shot diet. That happened. That happened in Game 3. They also played their 5 best players, Boston, their super small lineup with, it's not even that small, but Kemba, Smart, Tatum, Brown, Hayward, plus 13 in 7 minutes with Jaylen Brown mostly starting possessions on Bam, which is tough sledding for Jaylen Brown, but he did a great job. We'll see that lineup again. So Boston unveiled some cards in Game 3 that worked, and now we get to see what Miami does in response.
I love that lineup. I hope we see more of it. It has death lineup potential.
Ooh.
I don't mean defensively, clearly. I just being able to be that small and that versatile. I just think that they could attack you from so many different positions there that I shouldn't say death lineup. That's like invoking some kind of like holy talisman that just like it should only be used for specific situations. I strike it from the record, Your Honor.
I don't judge you for it. I'll let it go.
The ooh was kind of judgy though.
It was a little judgy. I mean, the death lineup is there's just only one.
I can see your face because we're doing this over video, so I could see like you were judging.
But it is a very good lineup. And one of the things I think Miami can do is Kemba still has to hide somewhere, and he was often hiding on Tyler Hero down the stretch, and I don't think they went at that enough. Tyler Hero is capable as a shooter, obviously, and a ball handler. That use him as a screener, use him as a ball handler. Don't let Kemba off the hook if he's on Tyler Hero, and he was for a decent amount of crunch time.
So one of my favorite things is especially at this point of the season, I want to see whether teams can forge a new path to the title or even to the finals. And this is why the Heat have intrigued me since day one, because if you look at, the Celtics have 2 emerging young stars, and they've got, an older star in Hayward and an older star-ish, older-ish in Hayward and Kemba. And it is much more, I would think, not in terms of positionally, but just in terms of profile, the traditional way forward. The Heat, the reason everybody slept on them was because they looked at Jimmy Butler a certain way, and Jimmy Butler, I think people, spent way too much time overanalyzing the last couple of years of his departures, not spending enough time thinking about why he was moving on and who he was moving on from. And I think he was, you can disagree with his tactics or his demeanor at given times, whatever. But Jimmy Butler's been a badass the whole time, and he's really great. And he's, as we know, a perfect fit with Miami. But I just think that it's interesting the way that they have emerged, because the Heat, if they can get to the finals, whether or not they win the championship, this is the new way. This is a new way forward. This is a different profile. This is not a 3-star super team. This is not even a traditional 2-star team, because Bam doesn't fit that profile, even though he is a star. Jimmy is not a takeover star. Jimmy's not the 20, 25 shots a night. I have to have the ball in my hands all the time. He's not. By the way, along the way here, heliocentrism has taken a big blow to the chin. The 3 highest usage guys, I had alluded to this in a Rocket story back in July. The 3 highest usage guys in the league, Harden, who were in these playoffs, actually this season period, in the regular season, Harden, Giannis, Luka, all out by the second round, or before the conference finals. So like these teams that are more balanced, which the Celtics are, which the Heat are, which the Nuggets are, I also just think is worth noting for a minute. That it's interesting that if we're looking for new paths forward, especially for smaller market teams or non-glamour market teams that cannot just collect superstars in free agency, can you build it a little differently? And what Miami has done in a combination of, yes, free agency, sign and trade with Butler, but mostly player development and smart trades and even some not so smart trades. And the Dragic trade was killed for a while because they gave up the 2 picks to Phoenix. Anyway, I love what the Heat have constructed, because it is very unconventional and a huge contrast to the last finals team that they constructed back in 2010.
3 Bam-centric things that I'm going to be watching in Game 4. Number 1, when the game was out of hand the other night, Bam got a couple of post scores over Boston's wings, and it wasn't over Kemba. It was over their stout wings. Jalen, I think one was Jalen, one was Hayward. If he can get that in the run of play, that's a big deal, because it limits Boston's ability to switch and they want smaller wing. They want Jaylen Brown on him, obviously, to switch everything. They want to switch as many things as they can. They don't want Bam rolling free for dunks like he was when Tice was on him the whole game 2 and game 1. That was interesting to me. The second thing, John Schumann wrote a great piece about, we all love Bam's ability to switch 1 to 5, and you cannot isolate against Bam. You just can't. Jason Tatum can't. Kemba Walker can't. He just devours everybody. But the downside of that is, as Schumann, I don't know that it's a downside. That's the point, is that Bam often ends up at the top of the arc defending away from the rim, because he's switched onto a guard. And so Boston was like, okay, Bam's up at the top of the key. Duncan Robinson's on Jason Tatum. Just drive. Bam's not near the rim anymore. I just don't know that. And so John suggested maybe they should switch a little bit less so that Bam can hang around the rim. I get that. I just think the value of taking away your pick and roll game and making you play ISO over and over and over again is so high. And I do think Bam can do things like, if I've switched on to Marcus Smart, I don't have to hang that close to Marcus Smart. I can come back to the nail to try and shut off a drive and dare Marcus Smart to beat me with threes, which he will be more than happy to try to do. And the last thing is, Bam was a dunk parade in game 2. And in game 3, if you watch some of the clips, Boston was on him with a help defender a little earlier and a little more aggressively than they were in game 2. And it wasn't just help defenders off Derrick Jones Jr. and Andre Iguodala, who's been a total non-factor. Even a couple times off Duncan Robinson, they decided we can't just glue ourselves to Duncan Robinson on the weak side because Bam is killing us. We're going to try to get away with it. So there was one when Dragic threw a pass, and as soon as Jaylen Brown sensed he's passing, he's sprinting in off Duncan Robinson and actually swats away the lob. There's another where Marcus Smart comes off him early. I wonder if the Heat will see that on film and say, okay, that's interesting. Should we look for Duncan Robinson a little bit? Or are there ways to exploit that? So those are my Bam-centric battlegrounds for Game 4. I can't wait for Game 4. I can't wait. I love to watch both these teams play. I think they're both really, really fun to watch. Last thing, I want to talk about the social justice video because it was beautiful. The message was beautiful. How did that come about? Obviously, you wrote it yourself. You wrote the essay yourself. How did this come about? And I just congratulations on it went viral, I guess. I mean, it was all over my Twitter feed last night.
No, thank you. So Turner launched that show, The Arena, as they were creating the bubble, right? So this was an acknowledgement that we are restarting the NBA season under very unusual circumstances, both the social justice part of things, the pandemic part of everything. And so, I think they intended this show to be a broad, thoughtful discussion of everything, both on and off the court, that would be different, obviously, than inside the NBA. And at the time that they launched it, they reached out to those of us who worked for BR Magazine, saying, look, this is going to be, a lot of Turner personalities, NBA TV and others, and some guests that have come in. Jamel Hill did an essay, I think, on the very first show. But they said, we want to use the writers from BR Mag. If you guys are interested, it was an option for us. And so several of us stepped up and said, yes, we'd be honored to be part of the show, for sure. Of course, it's a great opportunity to do something. So Master Tisfashian had one the other night that was also on the social justice issues. There's mine. David Gardner has one coming. Jonathan Abrams has one coming. And of course, as people know, several weeks ago, there was a decision made that BR Magazine is not going to be around much longer. So I was concerned at the time, well, are we still going to get to do this? Because I very much wanted this opportunity. And props to Turner and everybody in Atlanta for immediately saying, no, we still want to do this. And if you're still willing, it's up to you. And I said, yes, absolutely. I'd had this thought in mind from the beginning. You looked at all those jerseys, and I alluded to this at the beginning of the video. I think most of the focus was on the ones that are very, like, they're the very assertive messages that are obvious and you know exactly what they mean. Black Lives Matter, enough, say their names. Some of these are very evocative and clear. And it always just hit me that the ones that were, listen to us, hear us, as I said in the video essay, that was about a specific audience. Like, Black Americans don't have to tell other Black people, listen to me. They all know exactly what the issue is, what the concerns are, what the challenges have been. It's the rest of us. It's white America that has not been listening, not paying attention, that is responsible for the system that we have, the society that we have. And so it's up to us to fix it. And so I just thought that there was something to play off of there, to speak up in the way that, and I will say, listen, I've admired the last few years how emphatically, how passionately, and from the heart Greg Popovich has spoken on these issues as a white man, saying, I have a responsibility, that Stan Van Gundy has said, that Steve Kerr has said, that Kyle Korver in that phenomenal essay he wrote for the Players Tribune. I think, Zach, you and I both probably feel a kinship to them in that same sense of responsibility, but we're not in those same positions to stand up and say, listen to me, right? Like, the coaches have a standing, they're sports celebrities in our culture. Kyle Korver, certainly so. Steve Nash, others who have spoken out as white people in a largely Black sport, saying it's my responsibility to those that I work with. And, I am not in their plane. I am not at their level of notoriety, of celebrity, of anything. And so I was a little bit hesitant to say, like, how much do I want to put myself out there on this? For me I don't like the idea that I don't want to be preachy. I don't want to be lecturing, but I also do feel a responsibility, and I do feel passionately about this. And these are discussions I've had with a lot of friends across across the spectrum of every race and identity. So if I can say that in conversations with friends, can I say it in a video essay? Can I put this message out there? And I wrote it up. I sent it to the folks at Turner. They liked it. We didn't really change much of anything. It was a minor tweak here and there. So props to them for just the support, for believing in it, and for creating an incredible video with all the B-roll and the score and everything else to go with it. Turner did a fantastic job. And I was just honored to be part of that show and to be able to do this. I am happy and relieved, Zach, that 85% of the response last night over Twitter and otherwise has been positive. There's been the usual.
That's great.
The usual nonsense, the usual racism and ignorance and just stupidity or insane people or whatever. But I'm happy to say that the majority of the feedback has been positive. And I think people understood it and it resonated, and that makes me feel good.
I'm glad you did it. It did resonate. And I credit the players, because the players have I think forced media entities, sometimes not enthusiastically on the part of the media entities, to essentially declare what they stand for. And the players have said, we're an 80% black league. You guys ask a lot of us. You make your careers because of our skills and the entertainment that we provide. You ask us to do interviews. You ask us to tell you about our lives, how we feel after big games, big moments. You got to be with us on this. There's no more neutrality. There's no more like wink neutrality where you play it off like you're neutral, but you really are not, but you're afraid to say where you stand. You want to be partners with us. You talk about partnerships with us. You have to show where your cards are. You have to support us. And I think this is all happening because the players just said enough talking around it, enough whatever. And they have led all of this from the beginning, including in the bubble. You went back and, talked about the messages on the jerseys and the Bucks leading what became a 72-hour wildcat strike, basically. The players have done this. The players have changed the parameters of the discussion. And I think that's, whether or not it was inevitable or not, they accelerated it, and that's going to end up being healthy.
Absolutely. All of that. And I think for us who cover the league, look, there's two ways you can approach this. You can, look, it's a news story. And so we can take our typical emotionally distant, quote unquote, objective.
That's what I meant by wink neutrality. Like I'm just going to cover the news.
But all right, listen, if I were still working for the New York Times, that's how I would have had to approach it, Zach. I wouldn't have been doing a video essay because the Times doesn't have that option anyway. But working for traditional media, as I have in the past in the newspapers, and especially at the Times, I would have covered this as a news story. Maybe I would have written some other analysis. The story that I did about LeBron James in July, about how he has made possible a lot of today's NBA player activism through his work the last 10 years. And like that, I think he's made it kind of more comfortable for everybody else to come along when the face of the league does this. I wrote about that back in July. I could have written a story like that for the Times as well. What I could not have done, though, is to say I'm going to step out of my emotionally distant, cut off journalistic role where I just cover what I see in front of me. I convey what's there, and I've fulfilled my responsibility as a journalist and as a human being on some level by just making sure that people see and hear the message as I translate it or as I describe it or convey it in my writing. And that was fine for much of my career too. But we are in a moment here, and I'm fortunate to be in a place where I don't have to play by the old media rules, where I have to lock myself within certain bounds. We all have a responsibility. We all have to carry that out in the way that's most comfortable for us. And
where can people see your video? But other than going through your Twitter page, what's the easiest way for people to see it?
It's on NBA.com. I saw somebody link to it there. I think the TNT's website must have it as well. It's definitely on NBA.com. It's in my Twitter feed. And it's on the NBA on TNT Twitter feed is an easier place to find it because theirs is not as cluttered as mine is with other stuff. But NBA on TNT Twitter feed, which is just at NBA on TNT, or NBA.com under their video section. I think it's there as well.
Well, watch it. It was cool to see it last night. And Howard Beck, obviously your work needs no further approbation by me. Whatever is going on at Bleacher Report is whatever. The people will continue to read and consume you. And I look forward to seeing where life lands for you in the next X months. But you are always welcome here on the Lowe Post podcast. We will always say, "What up, Beck?" And thank you for coming on to discuss the conference finals and everything else, sir.
Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you. We will do it again soon, I'm sure. And maybe back on mine before mine disappears.
We got to do it. Got to do it. Got to do it. All right. Thank you, Howard.
You got it, man. Thank you.